I think that what we're talking about in a sense of preparedness and planning and figuring out to what level there's risk. I think Annette mentioned risk management and risk management plans. We have to have the ability to quantify all of these risks, all of these net impacts. So I think one of the biggest point of any asset management program is having adequate and standardized data that's going to provide the information that you need so that you can extrapolate and anticipate. So I think that it is important to be able to, even though the concept of, for example, trust might seem at first an intangible concept to quantize, it is important for organizations to take a step back and put pen to paper and define how can we assign some level of measure to what is the level of trust, what is the current perception, where do we want to go, how do we cover that?
The standard that I mentioned, the E3210 infrastructure management, could be seen as a hammer, and all the problems that I see are nails, so that that's what I'm going to use. But I think seriously, if people haven't read that standard, I encourage them to look at it, because it provides a framework to get started. And I'll give you the example of Flint, Michigan, where they had the lead contamination problem like 7 years ago. But here we are in 2021, and they're still dealing with it. Now with the infrastructure money from the Congress, maybe that'll get solved. But the problem is that there's so many other problems that could crop up. So the way that the standard works is that you deal closely with stakeholders in the community, and you have 2 public meetings every cycle of your analysis, so that you give people plenty of time to weigh in on, oh, that's not the problem we want to solve. Here's what we need to do, and here's the measure. And you might even use the ISO 37120 on sustainable cities that has lots of metrics that you could use, but you could customize for what you need. And I think the secret to success would be, if there's a crisis, don't let it go to waste. And Flint, use the potable water infrastructure type as what you're going to focus on. And then you get it's like skating or training wheels or idea, where you get one solved and then, let's go to the next one. Security, which might be police or fire, or maybe transit, or that kind of thing. So I think there are tools out there, and I think E3210 is one of those tools.
If I may, we are writing in the new standard, we are talking about whether we will adopt the sustainability as a principle or wherever, however, and we had 4 points, or I suggested 4 points that we looked at when we talk about how to adopt sustainability in asset management. And what I think we are sure about is it has to start at the very top. It has to start at the top management, at the policies, to have this principle, which is like a value-based, fundamental value. And the question is, how do you get sustainability in everything you are doing with your assets? And so we had these 4 points, and the first was that you need to have a systematic elaboration of the potential impact of asset management objectives and activities on the organization, of course, and the stakeholders of the organization, but also on the economy, the society, and the environment today and in the future. So you have to have this data. You have to think, how will your organization, your asset decisions, your asset policy, how will they impact others? So in regards of sustainability thinking or establishing. The second would be that you need to have your decision-making processes in a way that you have these same opportunities for everybody, lasting satisfaction of needs. So everything, how you decide, has to include that as decision things. At least think at it. It does not mean that you take the decision on that, but you have to be aware, what does it cost? What does it mean? The third would be, and we have not talked about that, but it's also at the top, is this question of like how you design, construct, operate, and disassemble assets, like this idea of circular economy. So you have to establish a process that looks that assets use the least amount of resources possible, and that they reuse and recycle and so on. From the very beginning, it's a very strategic decision as well. And last of all is the fourth point would be what I mentioned, is that we say that we have to establish, to recognize and respect and support the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals in everything we do. So it has to be a policy level, it has to be at the top management level of an organization to establish all these into asset management. And that would be the suggestions for the standard.
Thanks. Rob, I know, we had an email exchange around this, in our ISO 55000 development work around sustainability. And would you like to express a concern you had about, some of the approaches to sustainability and some of the implications?
There will be challenges for specific sectors, depending on how we approach the framing of sustainability. In the past, for instance, in the 55,000 2014 version of the asset management standard, which is just an overview document, but we characterised these types of issues under a clause 2.2, benefits of asset management. And there's a phrase there, asset management supports the realisation of value while balancing financial, environmental, social costs, risk quality and service performance. So back in 2014, the asset management community was on the road and taking steps to recognise that this was a fundamental characteristic that the system had to deliver on. Where we're entering now, I suppose, in our committee's deliberations at ISO is how more directly to characterise that within the standard. So yeah, that can be challenging for some organisations. For instance, as I said, I've worked for the military for quite a long time. Back in World War II, a soldier was estimated to cost 3.8 litres of fuel per day. That cost per fuel per day is now 56 litres. An F-35 jet fighter costs 5,600 litres of fuel per hour. It replaces an F-16 aircraft that used to cost 3,600 litres of fuel per hour. So what you're seeing in some sectors is they're becoming highly effective, and in terms of the military, highly effective warfighting machines, but they're faster and they're heavier. And so the fossil fuel impost on the planet is absolutely enormous. If you take the US, for example, 93% of all fuel used by your federal government is consumed by the Defence Department. That's something like 48 billion litres of fuel a year. The US in 2006, in its air missions over Afghanistan, consumed more fuel in 1 year than the entire US Air Force effort during World War II. So you can see human endeavour in the modern era is coming at an astronomical resource burden on the planet. Now, is the military going to go away? No, it's not. Is it going to cost more and more? Probably. So there needs to be a focus on, well, okay, but how do we become a lot more efficient at doing this? And that's a challenge for many sectors. And I could go to mining, oil and gas, you know, so on and so forth. But it's about adapting, and you know, there are efforts to adapt these particular sectors and industries to other ways of working. But those things take time, and my concern is if we become too direct in the standard, we might lose a lot of sectors and industries that just won't be able to meet the goals of the standard. So it's about bringing them on a journey and then allowing them to transition. So we need to be able to word it in a way that focuses on the opportunities in transition to actually start more efficiently using those resources.
I was going to say, at the risk of being booed off the panel here, you know, I go back, and I liked Malak's point about, you know, data, right? And for me, you know, that's why it's so important with some of these, you know, new digital environments, right? The digital modeling, the virtualization that's taking place is, when we build a model, you know, I think I kind of, you know, kind of make people look at me sideways when I say, well, it's kind of like a Jello mold. You know, when you see this nice Jello mold on the table and you poke it and it jiggles, that, you know, it's okay, that's an expected response. But, you know, what happens if you take that, you know, that sledgehammer and just smash it and it goes all over the place? Well, you know, with a model, you can almost do that, right? You can when you have a digital virtual model of you know, the science, the engineering that goes into these asset systems, these structures, I can kind of understand response mechanisms. And as we're even saying, you know, it's kind of, well, the normal, you know, how should this system normally operate? Well, now we're in a world of extremes. So our modeling should be extreme and throw these extreme events at it and kind of see what the system responds as. And so that comes down to, you know, the fidelity of the data, kind of as I think as Malak was alluding to, of, you know, are we modeling these systems? And so I say it's kind of a shameless plug for digitalization, but, you know, I do think that plays an important role as we get into the system of systems sort of engineering approach.